Valoria crossed her arms, the faint glow of her patterns pulsing with sharp, disapproving hues. "You went back," she said, her voice low but edged with an unmistakable reprimand. "Even after you grasped the vastness of his mind, after you caught a glimpse of the chaos lurking there. You knew the danger, Sai'la, yet you decided to jump back in. Tell me, what part of that wasn't reckless or arrogant?" Sai'la flinched, her gaze dropping to her trembling hands. The weight of Valoria's words pressed heavily on her chest. I didn't know what I was walking into," she murmured. Her voice was barely above a whisper, tinged with both regret and fascination. His mind it was like nothing I've ever encountered before. At first it was just strange, chaotic, but then it became mesmerizing, fascinating. Like a sea that seemed shallow at first, but the further I went, the more I realized I was drowning, slowly but surely. Valoria's gaze softened, though her stance remained firm. "And you still chose to dive in deeper. Curiosity, Sai'la, is a powerful force, but it must be tempered with wisdom. You let your pride guide you, and now you're paying the price." Sai'la looked up, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I thought I could handle it. I've always been able to handle it." Valoria leaned in slightly, her voice steady and calm but carrying the weight of expectation. "And then?" she asked, her crystalline eyes locking onto Sai'la's. "What happened next?" As I re-entered the human's mind, I found myself tumbling into a disorienting fog, still tinged with the residual confusion from his awkward encounter with the stone-skinned Zorian. His thoughts were fragmented, unsure, like pieces of a puzzle scattered in a whirlwind. The energy that had once been frantic, filled with anxiety and swirling memories, had calmed for the moment. Now what I felt was a hesitant, fragile awareness, as if his mind was holding its breath, unsure of itself. But now, as his awareness returned, the mental fog began to clear. I could sense the shift. Thoughts began to filter back in, slow, disjointed, like someone fumbling their way back into consciousness. Did I embarrass myself? What was I even thinking? How long was I staring? The human's awareness of himself returned in an instant, the feeling of being watched now sharp in his thoughts. I could tell he was still grappling with the aftermath of his blank stare, unsure of what had just happened. I could feel his discomfort, the uncertainty in his mind as he wondered if he had made a fool of himself. Why was I staring like that? His thoughts buzzed with insecurity, fear of judgment, of appearing strange or foolish. The thoughts shifted abruptly, a sudden surge of curiosity rippling through the mindscape like a bolt of erratic lightning. The human's gaze flickered briefly, hesitating before darting covertly toward the towering Zorian, seated a few tables away, the same one who had rebuked him earlier for staring too long. He tried not to look too obvious this time, though his thoughts betrayed his curiosity. His skin looks like granite. Shaking hands with him would be a terrible idea. Bullets probably won't do a thing, but a 50 BMG? Oh yeah, that'll punch through for sure. Firing a 50 BMG rifle would be cool, he thought, his mind swirling with excitement. But firing a minigun? That'd be way more fun. Firing a minigun is even for few seconds expensive, though. I need to hear the ping of an M1 Garand again. Now that is satisfying. I could hardly keep up with the erratic shifts in his thoughts. One moment, he was dreaming of unleashing sheer, destructive firepower. The next, he was fixated on the nostalgic charm of a specific sound. How could one mind leap from raw chaos to such oddly precise imagery so effortlessly? And why was I starting to feel curious about the ping myself? The thought lingered before curving back to the Zorian. A minigun would definitely shred his stone skin, but Superman? Superman didn't even flinch under minigun fire. Superman's invincible. Do aliens even read comics? Probably not. They don't know what they're missing. Even after all these centuries, we humans still love our comics. A wave of pride tinged the thought, warm and vibrant. Batman, though. Our Batman. Now he's the greatest detective in the whole universe. Who needs powers when you've got a mind like that? He's even embarrassed Darkseid more times than I can count. But the pride gave way to idle musing, a shimmering swirl of possibilities. If a genie showed up right now and granted me a wish, what superpower would I ask for? The question hung in the air, vivid and teasing. Do I go for Superman's powers, flight, strength, invincibility, or Batman's mind, genius, strategic, always one step ahead? His thoughts twisted again, playful and imaginative. Why not both? He's a genie, after all. He can give me both. Or maybe I should ask for billions of credits. No, wait. The brightness dimmed slightly, doubt creeping back into the mindscape. Genies are tricky. They always twist your wishes. If I ask for money, I'll probably end up buried in coins or something. If I ask for Superman's powers, I'll probably crush every person I touch by mistake. Having that much strength would be way too dangerous. The musings tapered into a haze of indecision, a tangle of hypotheticals and what-ifs that never quite settled. To be inside this mind was to feel its relentless energy, chaotic, inventive, but always tinged with that flickering unease, that nagging sense of what could go wrong. I reeled as the train of thought derailed yet again, this time into an image of himself as a superhero, not Superman, but something original. What if I had the power to freeze time? That'd be cool. I could finally catch up on sleep, or clean my apartment. Wait, what if time stayed frozen forever? Would I age? Or would I get stuck? Oh no, that'd be terrible. I felt an abrupt ripple in his thoughts, a memory surging unbidden to the forefront of his mind. It was almost as if it had grabbed him without warning, tugging him back to an uncomfortable moment. His mind wandered back to the time he accidentally called his teacher Mom in front of the entire class. The instant the words left his mouth, I felt a sinking pit form in his stomach, the weight of that embarrassing mistake pressing down on him. There was no way to take that back, he thought, and I felt the sharp sting of self-consciousness. The awkward silence that followed was unbearable. I could sense the crushing weight of every eye on him, and his face flushed with humiliation. He replayed the teacher's confused glance, the snickers from his classmates, and the discomfort of being at the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. It felt like that moment was branded in his memory, a permanent scar of embarrassment that lingered far beyond the class bell. I hadn't expected to feel such intensity from him, this self-doubt and shame seemingly triggered without any warning. It was a sudden shift, an unexpected dive into his past, and it surprised me. How quickly his mind had transported itself back there. Why did I remember that? Brain, why do you do this to me? His internal dialogue resumed, the embarrassment fading into a mixture of self-deprecation and humour. At least it's funny now. Kind of, maybe. I let out a mental breath I hadn't realised I was holding. His mind. It was relentless, unpredictable, and utterly fascinating. For every moment of chaos, there was an equal measure of depth of humanity. I wasn't sure whether to retreat or press on. But one thing was clear. This was a journey unlike any I had ever undertaken. What if I just quit my job and travelled the world? A vivid image of sprawling mountains and sunlit beaches filled his mindscape. But then, how would I afford it? I'd need a plan. Or maybe I could start a blog about it. People make money from blogs, right? Or videos. Yeah, travel videos. But would people even watch them? Probably not. The human's internal monologue was relentless, leaping from one idea to the next with breathtaking speed. Each thought unfurled into new tangents, splintering into dozens of possibilities before vanishing and being replaced. I clung to my composure, focusing on each thread as best I could, though my mental energy waned. His creativity was boundless, a storm of ideas swirling with no center, no anchor. There was an innocence to it, a childlike wonder paired with a deep anxiety that seemed to colour every thought. What if there was a superhero movie where the villain actually won? And why don't more movies have good food scenes? I couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity buried within the chaos. For every absurd idea, there was a kernel of brilliance, a spark of something extraordinary. The human mind, though utterly exhausting, was undeniably magnificent. Then came a memory. He was a child, staring in awe at a towering knight in shining armour at a museum. Swords are so cool. Why don't people use swords anymore? Oh, right, guns. But even as the thought faded, his mind lingered. Back then, people were brave. They fought with swords and arrows. Could you imagine? The scene in his memory shifted suddenly, his imagination sweeping him into the past. If I lived in that era, I'd want a scimitar. Curved, sharp, and absolutely deadly. It's the kind of sword you'd want for speed and style. But then again, maybe a katana so sleek and perfect for precision strikes. There's just something about how they're crafted. His thoughts ricocheted to another option. Or a longsword, the knightly classic. It's versatile, good for defense and attack. A claymore would be badass too, huge and intimidating. But would I even have the strength to swing one? The possibilities kept branching out. A saber, light and fast, great for cavalry charges, or a rapier, fencing always looked cool, so quick and elegant. But what if the other guy has Zweihander? Imagine charging into battle, wielding a sword taller than you. It'd be ridiculous, but kind of epic. The absurdity of the thought made Sila chuckle mentally, though she immediately stifled it, worried he might somehow sense her presence. His mind whirled through images of each weapon, a tapestry of blades from every era and culture. Would I even be good with any of them? Or would I just end up tripping over my own feet, holding something like a ridiculous ornamental blade? Self-doubt crept in again, but the thought of swords remained, a persistent, shimmering fascination amidst the chaos of his mind. I cried out as the thought veered again. How could one mind hold so much? It wasn't just the volume of ideas, but their depth and breadth. From trivial musings to profound questions, from the mundane to the fantastical, his thoughts spanned the entire spectrum of human experience. The sheer unpredictability of this human's mind was staggering. Would he ever settle on anything, or was this endless loop of speculation his version of peace? The swords dissolved into a mist of steel grey as the tone of his thoughts shifted, darkening like a gathering storm. His mind spiraled downwards into a vortex of worries, each anxiety surfacing for a fleeting moment before being overtaken by the next. Why am I even thinking about swords? It's not like I'd ever use one. What if I actually needed one, though? Like, what if the world just changed? Would I survive? I probably wouldn't. I don't work out enough. I should really start working out. But what if I get injured? What if I mess up my back? I don't have time to deal with physical therapy. I flinched as the intensity of his self-recrimination struck me like a physical force. His thoughts churned relentlessly, a relentless tide pulling me deeper into his emotional turmoil. I should have gone to bed earlier last night. I knew I had stuff to do today. Why am I like this? Why can't I just focus? Everyone else seems to have it together. I bet they don't overthink everything. I wonder if they're tired of dealing with me. What if I'm just too much? The deep blue of his sadness wove through the mindscape, pooling in the recesses of his memories. I felt it wash over me, heavy and suffocating. And why did I say you too to the waiter? Oh God, what an idiot I am. They're probably still laughing about it right now. What if they remember me next time? The worry spiraled out of control, dragging him further into an imagined scenario where he was forever branded as that guy who said you too. Okay. Breathe. Just breathe. It's not a big deal. Nobody cares. But what if they do? What if it's not just this? What if everything I do is wrong? The self-doubt formed a jagged edge in the mindscape, and I recoiled, stunned by its intensity. For all the chaos I had seen in his mind, this undercurrent of anxiety was the most overwhelming. It was relentless, gnawing at every thought, every moment, until even the most mundane considerations were tinged with fear. As I ventured deeper into his thoughts, a memory surged forward, alive with tension and frustration. His boss stood over him in the cramped meeting room, the faint hum of a projector filling the silence after her words. Her tone was sharp, cutting through his already frayed nerves. Do you even understand how important this deadline is? Or are you too busy making excuses? He had stared at her, fists tightening under the table. I'm doing my best, he'd replied evenly, though his chest burned with the effort to stay calm. Her eyes narrowed. Your best isn't good enough. Deadlines don't care about your excuses. She turned on her heel, walking out before he could respond, leaving the air heavy with unspoken words. Now, sitting in the restaurant, the memory looped in his mind like a bad song stuck on repeat. Regret simmered, followed by a flood of better responses he wished he'd said. If you'd given us the extra time we needed, this wouldn't even be a problem, one thought screamed. Why don't you try fixing that impossible task list you came up with? Another spat. Maybe if you stopped throwing new ideas at us every week, we'd actually finish something. Each imagined comeback felt satisfying for a moment before doubt crept in. Would that have gotten me fired? Maybe it's better I didn't say anything. But why does staying quiet always feel like I've lost? The frustration in his mind was like jagged lightning, darting from one regret to the next. He replayed the scene over and over. searching for a version where he'd stood his ground and left his boss speechless. I could feel the weight of his regret pulling at me, heavy and endless. Why didn't I just say it, he thought, the words echoing in his mind like a haunting refrain. I exhaled softly, observing the endless cycle of imagined arguments and spiraling doubt. Humans, I whispered to myself, you fight battles long after they're over. But if he heard me, he gave no sign. The human mind was a volatile quantum disruptor, its mechanisms firing endlessly and unpredictably, like a star that refused to settle into its orbit. It wasn't just chaos, as I had assumed, but an intricate system of ceaseless updates and interwoven impulses that defied every psionic principle I had ever known. His thoughts had already leapt ahead, preparing for the next confrontation that might never even happen, and I found myself swept into the storm of his mind. The restaurant around us transformed in an instant, a vivid scenario unfolding with startling clarity. Armed thugs burst through the entrance, weapons raised, their intent clear and menacing. Before I could comprehend his next thought, he imagined himself springing into action. He moved with a grace and precision that defied reality, flipping a table for cover, disarming one thug with a swift, almost theatrical strike, and neutralizing another with calculated movements. Each motion in his mind was fluid, heroic, impossibly effective, as if he were the star of his own cinematic epic. And then, to my surprise, I became part of his fantasy. He saw me, crouched behind an upturned table, my glowing patterns faintly pulsing. His attention locked onto me with unwavering focus, his imagined intent clear, to protect. When one of the thugs leveled a weapon at me, he didn't hesitate. In his mind, he hurled a chair with uncanny accuracy, disarming the attacker in one swift motion. He followed with a roll to my position, positioning himself between me and the danger, not with his body, but with the clever use of an overturned table as a shield. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice steady and impossibly composed, as he extended an imagined hand toward me. I stifled a chuckle, unsure whether to feel flattered or exasperated. I could only observe a mixture of amusement and awe rippling through me. The intensity of his fantasy, the way he cast himself as the flawless hero, not just protecting his own kind but leaping to defend mine, was absurdly overblown. And yet, it was also deeply impressive. Was this how humans processed danger? By transforming themselves into figures of unstoppable resolve? Their ability to conjure such elaborate and optimistic scenarios, even in imagination, was unlike anything I'd ever encountered. I felt a twinge of flattery as his mind painted me wide-eyed with admiration, my glowing patterns bright with imagined gratitude. "You saved me," I heard myself say in his mind, my voice soft and awestruck. The sheer conviction in the scene was breathtaking. I found myself marveling at the complexity of his thoughts. The human mind wasn't just chaotic, it was a storm of creativity and determination, capable of weaving impossibilities into something inspiring. No other mind I'd touched had ever contained such boundless potential. Humans truly are remarkable, I thought, the corners of my lips lifting into an unbidden smile. For all their flaws, their unpredictability, and their ego, there was something beautiful in the way they imagined themselves. Suddenly, his thoughts screeched to a halt, and a wave of self-awareness washed over the mental landscape. "Man, I should really stop with these stupid thoughts," his inner voice shouted, practically echoing through the vibrant chaos of his mind. The intensity of his own frustration struck me like a physical blow. If someone could read my mind, I would die of embarrassment. I froze. Did he somehow sense me? Impossible. No sentient creature had ever been able to detect my presence before. Yet the raw vulnerability in his thoughts startled me. His embarrassment radiated through the mindscape, a crimson wave of self-consciousness that dimmed the vibrancy of his previous musings. I found myself struck by a strange pang of guilt. This human, for all his chaotic thoughts and unpredictable leaps of imagination, wasn't trying to be understood by anyone but himself. And yet here I was, uninvited, bearing witness to his most private musings. But then, mid-thought, his gaze flicked to me, and a sudden realization hit him like a shockwave. "Wait, isn't she one of those species that can read minds?" The thought lingered, sharp and panicked, before cascading into frantic action. "Oh shit, she's reading my mind! Quick, imagine everyone naked!" And just like that, The carefully constructed heroism crumbled into chaos. His imagination spun wildly, and in the next instant everyone within his gaze, the diners, the staff, the attackers, even me, was naked. He froze. Wait, isn't that for stage fright? The correction came too late. His mind had already committed. The restaurant scene transformed into something comically bizarre, the thugs now armed but inexplicably unclothed, their attempts at intimidation undermined by the surreal image. And just like that, the scenario unraveled into chaos. His mental defenses, if they could even be called that, exploded outward, the absurdity of his reaction creating a tidal wave of raw, uncontrolled energy. His unguarded mind, so powerful and erratic, recoiled against my intrusion like a tightened rubber band snapping violently. The force struck me without warning. Pain lanced through my head, a searing intensity that overwhelmed my senses. My connection to his mind shattered, and I was flung backward into my own consciousness. My vision blurred, and my body trembled uncontrollably as the feedback surged through me. My mind reeled, struggling to process the sudden backlash. The human's panic, his unintentional but immense mental push, had torn through my defenses and left me disoriented. The last thing I saw before the darkness closed in was the human rushing toward me, his voice frantic and tinged with guilt as he called for emergency services. The room was thick with silence after Sai'la's recounting. The two attendants glanced at each other nervously before one finally found her voice. "Council head, how did this happen? Why did Sai'la fall into such a deep coma?" Valoria's crystalline eyes glimmered as she turned to the speaker, her calm yet intense presence filling the room. Sai'la's coma was the result of venturing into a mind that defied everything we psionics understand. The human mind is chaotic, yes, but this one was extraordinary, amplified by a condition they call ADHD. ADHD, the second attendant repeated, her patterns flickering with confusion. "We've read about it in the reports, but what does it actually do?" "It heightens the natural chaos of human thought," Valoria explained patiently. "Humans with ADHD experience their minds as an unending torrent, leaping between ideas, emotions, and memories with little control or pause. Thoughts spiral outward in every direction, forming connections faster than they can be processed. For Sai'la, entering such a mind was akin to diving into an ocean during a storm." Sai'la's voice trembled as she spoke. "But I've navigated complex minds before. Warlords, philosophers, beings whose thoughts spanned dimensions. How was this different?" Valoria's gaze softened as she addressed her, because this wasn't just complexity, it was relentless unpredictability. Other species have structure, even in their most intricate thoughts. Humans do not. Their thoughts are not linear. They overlap, collide, and evolve in an instant. Add ADHD to that equation, and the mind becomes an ever-shifting labyrinth. The first attendant stepped closer, her tone wary. "But why a coma? What caused her mind to shut down so completely?" Valoria's expression darkened. "When the human became aware of Sai'la's presence, his mind reacted instinctively. Panic set in, amplified by the very nature of his condition. The result was a backlash, an overwhelming surge of raw, unfiltered thought. This mental energy struck Sai'la like a wave, tearing through her defenses and leaving her consciousness shattered." Sai'la shivered, gripping the edges of her blanket. It was like nothing I've ever felt. One moment I was swimming through his thoughts, trying to make sense of them. The next it was as if the entire ocean turned on me. The second attendant paled, her patterns dimming. "So his mind attacked her?" "Not deliberately," Valoria clarified. "It was instinctive, a reflex born of fear and confusion. But for us psionics, such an unrestrained response is devastating. Sai'la's coma was her mind's way of protecting itself. It shut down to repair the damage and to disentangle itself from the human's chaotic storm." The first attendant frowned, her tone tinged with awe. "And the ADHD, it made it worse?" Valoria nodded. "Far worse. ADHD amplifies the speed and depth of thought, making every idea more vivid, every connection more intense. For Sai'la, it wasn't just chaos she faced, it was chaos with infinite depth. Every thought she touched spiraled into dozens more, each one alive with emotion." Sai'la looked up, her eyes glistening. It wasn't just chaos, it was beautiful. His mind was filled with so much life. Regret, humour, curiosity, fear, everything was so vivid. It was overwhelming, but it was incredible. Valoria regarded her with a mix of sternness and understanding. And that is why you are fortunate to be awake now, Sai'la. Your arrogance led you to believe you could master what you did not understand. But now you see the truth. The human mind is not a puzzle to be solved. It is an ocean, vast and unpredictable, and you ventured into its depths without knowing how to swim. The second attendant spoke hesitantly. So, what do we do now? Shouldn't the council act on this? Valoria's tone turned firm. No, we do not act against humanity. The warnings in our code exist not to punish them, but to protect us. Their minds are not dangerous by intent. They are simply different. What Sai'la experienced was a lesson, one that reminds us of the limits of our understanding. She turned back to Sai'la, her voice softening. Rest now, Sai'la. You survived what no psionic has before. But let this be a warning. Curiosity is no shield against hubris. And for the rest of us, let it be a reminder. The human mind is an ocean we must admire from the shore, not a battlefield we seek to conquer. Thank you for listening to this part of the story. The next and final chapter will follow the human's arrival at the hospital, where he shares insights about various human mental conditions, including schizophrenia, with the aliens.